The rain had been falling for 3 hours straight when Marcus pulled over. He almost didn't. He had Lily in the backseat, already asleep with her mouth open and her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin, and it was past 9 o'clock on a Tuesday, and he had work at 6 in the morning, and the highway stretched dark and slick ahead of them. Every reasonable part of his brain told him to keep driving. But then he saw the hazard lights blinking orange through the downpour, a sleek black Mercedes sitting lopsided on the shoulder with a flat tire, and something in his chest, some stubborn, inconvenient piece of who he was, wouldn't let him pass. He eased his truck onto the shoulder, leaving plenty of distance, and grabbed the flashlight from his glove compartment. He pulled his hood up against the rain and stepped out into the cold. "Hey," he called, approaching cautiously. "You need some help." The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out. And the world stopped. She was wearing a charcoal blazer soaked through at the shoulders, her dark hair plastered to her face by the rain, and she was holding a phone in one hand with the screen cracked straight down the middle. She looked up at him through the downpour, and even after 11 years of trying to forget, of convincing himself he had succeeded, he knew that face the way he knew his own reflection. The slight upturn of her nose. The dark eyes that always seemed to be thinking 3 things at once. The way her lips parted just slightly when something surprised her. They parted exactly like that now. "Marcus," she whispered. He hadn't heard his name sound like that since he was 22 years old. "Elena," he said. For a moment neither of them moved, standing in the hammering rain on the side of a dark highway as though the universe had reached down and pressed pause on everything sensible and ordinary about their lives. Then she laughed, a short, disbelieving sound, and pressed her hand over her mouth, and Marcus felt something crack open in the center of his chest that he'd spent a decade carefully sealing shut. They had met in college, in a cramped little coffee shop where Marcus worked the early morning shift and Elena would come in at 7 a.m. sharp with a textbook under her arm and order the same black coffee every single day. He'd started writing small things on her cup, a word, a doodle, once a terrible haiku about caffeine, and she'd started leaving notes on napkins tucked under her empty cup when she left. It had been the most natural thing in the world, falling in love with her. Like water finding the path downhill. But Elena had been driven in a way that sometimes frightened him with its intensity. She had plans, big ones, the kind that required sacrifice and singular focus and a willingness to leave things behind. Her family had lost everything when she was 12, a business collapse that took their house and her father's dignity with it, and she had promised herself, with the bone-deep seriousness of a child who grows up too fast, that she would build something that couldn't be taken away. Marcus had loved her. He had also been 22 and scared and not yet the man he needed to be, and when she'd told him she was leaving for a fellowship in New York, he hadn't fought for her the way he should have. He'd told her to go. He'd told her it was fine. He'd said all the things people say when they're too proud or too afraid to say the true thing, which was, "Please don't leave me, I don't know who I am without you." She left. He let her. And then he spent years learning, the hard way, who he was without her. "I can change the tire," Marcus said, because standing in the rain having an existential experience wasn't going to help either of them. "I've got tools in the truck." "You don't have to." "Elena." He said her name quietly, and she stopped. "Let me help." She nodded. He worked in the rain while she stood nearby, offering to hold the flashlight with the calm practicality of someone who didn't embarrass easily. He noticed the way she watched him, carefully, the way you look at something you're trying to figure out. He'd always been something she was trying to figure out. "You live around here?" she asked. "Cloverdale. About 20 minutes up the road." He loosened the last lug nut. I was driving back from a conference in the city. My GPS sent me down this road and then, well." She gestured at the flat tire. He'd heard her name over the years, of course. It was hard not to. Elena Voss had become the kind of name that appeared in business magazines and tech news, the founder and CEO of a logistics company that had quietly revolutionized supply chain infrastructure for mid-sized businesses. He'd seen her photo once, in an article his coworker had left on the break room table, and he'd turned the magazine face down and walked away and told himself that whatever he felt was just nostalgia. Just the ghost of something old. "I heard about your company," he said. "Veridian, right?" She looked slightly startled, like she was still getting used to the idea that her name had become a thing people knew. Yes, it's extraordinary, Elena, genuinely." She was quiet for a moment. "What about you?" He fit the spare into place and began tightening the bolts. "I'm a contractor. Residential construction, mostly. Some commercial." He paused. "And I'm a dad. You have kids?" "One. Lily. She's 5. He nodded toward the truck, where the small shape of his daughter was still visible through the foggy back window. She's asleep. Something moved across Alina's face, something careful and tender that she tucked away quickly. Is her mother. We split when Lily was 18 months old. He kept his voice even. It's just the two of us. He stood up, wiped his hands on his jeans, and looked at her directly for the first time since she'd stepped out of the car. The rain was easing to a fine mist now, and in the glow of the hazard lights she looked the same and entirely different, the way a place looks when you return to it after years away, familiar in its bones, changed in all its surfaces. She's lucky to have you, Elena said softly. I'm the lucky one. He meant it completely, without hesitation or self-pity. That was the thing about Lily. She had taken every broken and uncertain piece of him and given it a purpose. When her mother left, a mutual collapse, nobody fully the villain, Marcus had been terrified in a way he'd never admitted to anyone. A single dad at 31, working construction, raising a daughter on a budget that required real creativity at the end of every month. But Lily had this laugh, this enormous, full-body laugh that she deployed without reservation, and every time he heard it he felt like the richest man alive in the way that actually matters. Do you want to come sit in the truck? He asked. Until you're sure the spare holds pressure. She hesitated, and he could see her weighing it, the practical woman who had built a company from nothing versus whatever this moment was asking of her. Okay, she said. Lily, it turned out, did not stay asleep. She surfaced from her dreams the moment Elena settled carefully into the passenger seat, and peered over the center console with the unfiltered curiosity of a 5-year-old who had not yet learned that staring is impolite. Hi, she said. Hi, Elena said, smiling, a real smile, unguarded in a way her public photographs never were. You're pretty, Lily informed her. Lily, Marcus said. She is, Dad. Elena laughed, and it was the same laugh he remembered, warm and a little surprised, like joy had caught her off guard. Thank you. I like your rabbit. Lily held up the rabbit for inspection. His name is Gerald. He's been with me since I was a baby. His ear is a little broken, but that's because he's loved. That's the best reason for something to be a little broken, Elena said gently. Marcus kept his eyes forward, but he felt the words settle in his chest like a stone dropped in still water. They sat there for a while, the three of them, with the rain pattering on the roof of the truck and Lily asking Elena increasingly elaborate questions. Did she have a rabbit? What was her favorite dinosaur? Had she ever seen a shooting star? And Elena answering each one with complete seriousness, as though these were important matters deserving of thoughtful response. Which, to Lily, they absolutely were. When Lily finally drifted back to sleep clutching Gerald, the silence between the adults settled in, and it was a different kind of silence. The kind that has weight. I thought about calling you, Elena said quietly. 100 times. After I left. Why didn't you? She looked at her hands. Because I was afraid you'd tell me it was fine. Like you did when I left. And I don't think I could have handled hearing that again. The honesty of it hit him like cold water. I shouldn't have said that. I didn't mean it. I know. She looked at him. I knew it then, too. That's the part that was hardest. Marcus breathed out slowly. This was the conversation they should have had 11 years ago, on the sidewalk outside his apartment with her suitcase between them, instead of the careful, painless goodbye they'd performed for each other's benefit. I was scared, he said. Of holding you back. Of being the reason you didn't become this. Everything you've become. You wouldn't have held me back, Marcus. Maybe not, but I didn't know how to be what you needed. Neither did I, she said. Know what I needed, I mean. I thought I did. I thought if I just kept building and growing and achieving, eventually I'd feel. She stopped. Started again. My company is worth $60 million. I have an apartment in Manhattan and a house in the Pacific Northwest, and I've been on the cover of 2 business magazines. She said it without pride, almost with puzzlement, like she was reading a description of a stranger. And I drove 3 hours alone to a conference and 3 hours back alone, and when my tire blew out in the rain, the person I wanted to call, her voice broke slightly. There was no one. The rain had stopped entirely now. Through the windshield, Marcus could see the first stars appearing between the parting clouds. There's something I never told you, he said. When Lily was born, and I was alone in that hospital waiting room, I thought about you. I thought, Elena would know what to say right now. She'd make this feel possible. He glanced at his daughter sleeping in the backseat. And then Lily arrived, and I figured it out. But you were the person I practiced being brave with. You taught me that I could. Elena was very still. You don't need someone, Elena. You've proven that beyond any doubt. He looked at her steadily. But maybe the point was never whether you needed someone. Maybe the point is whether you want someone. Whether you choose it. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, would you, and stopped. Tried again. Could we get coffee sometime? Not to fix everything. Not with any kind of expectation. Just, coffee. Marcus smiled, and it felt like something unlocking. I know a good place, he said. Terrible haiku on the cups. She laughed, and this time the laugh lasted, spilling out into the quiet cab of the truck, and Lily stirred in the backseat and smiled in her sleep without waking, as though even dreaming she recognized the sound of something good beginning. They didn't fall back into love the way they'd fallen into it the first time, easily, without thinking, like stepping into warm water. The second time was slower and more deliberate and occasionally awkward and more honest than anything Marcus had ever experienced. Elena came to Cloverdale on a Saturday and walked through a hardware store with him while he picked out materials for a client's deck, and somewhere between the lumber aisle and the parking lot she reached out and took his hand, not dramatically, just quietly, the way you reach for something you've been thinking about for a while. Lily decided she approved. She made her feelings known, as she made all her feelings known, with the directness of someone who had not yet learned to complicate simple truths. I like her, Dad, she said one evening. She listens when I talk. Some grown-ups don't really listen. I know, Marcus said. She's always been good at that. There were hard conversations. There were differences, in their schedules, their worlds, their bank accounts, which Marcus had to consciously decide not to let mean something it didn't mean. There were moments when the distance between who they'd been at 22 and who they were now felt vast and possibly unbridgeable. Elena had panic attacks about vulnerability that she'd never told anyone about, and Marcus had a stubbornness about asking for help that had served him in construction and served him poorly in relationships. They were not simple people with simple needs. But here is what Marcus understood, standing in the rain on a dark highway on a Tuesday night, and what he carried forward from that moment into everything that came after. Love is not a feeling that arrives and stays without tending. It's a choice made again and again, with full knowledge of the difficulty, and the choosing is what makes it mean something. He had let her go once because he was afraid of being the wrong choice. He wouldn't make that mistake again. And Elena, for her part, had spent 11 years building things that couldn't be taken away, only to discover, in a truck on a rainy highway, talking to a 5-year-old about a rabbit named Gerald, that the things most worth having are exactly the ones you can't protect yourself from losing. That's what makes them worth having. That's the whole point. The night they met on that highway, after she drove away on the spare tire and Marcus drove home through the clearing sky, he carried Lily into the house and tucked her into bed and stood in the doorway of her room for a moment, watching her breathe. Dad, she murmured without opening her eyes. Yeah, Bug, the pretty lady, is she going to be okay? He thought about it. He thought about Elena driving through the dark toward a big empty apartment, and about the person she was still in the process of becoming, and about the fact that second chances don't announce themselves, they just stand at the side of the road in the rain with their hazard lights on, hoping someone will stop. Yeah, he said, I think she's going to be just fine. He turned off the light. And for the first time in a very long time, so was he.